हरि ओम। नमस्सर्वेभ्यः। अष्टाध्यायी परिचयः इत्यस्य अद्य 12 पाठः। अस्मिन् वर्गे पाणिनीयधातुपाठस्य किञ्चित् अध्ययनं कुर्मः। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम्। अस्माकं वर्गस्य द्वे प्रयोजने अष्टाध्याय्याः आहत्य 400 सूत्राणां व्याख्यासहितम् उदाहरणसहितं च अध्ययनं, तथा च अष्टाध्याय्याः प्रथमाध्यायस्य प्रथमपादस्य कण्ठस्थीकरणम्। पूर्वस्मिन् वर्गे अस्माभिः पाणिनीयसूत्रपाठस्य सामान्यरूपेण ज्ञानं प्राप्तं। विशेषरूपेण सूत्राणाम् अध्ययनम् इदानीं नारब्धं, परन्तु सूत्रपाठः तथा च पाणिनिः एतयोः द्वयोः अस्माभिः सामान्यरूपेण अध्ययनं कृतमस्ति। इदानीम् अग्रे गच्छामः। पाणिनीयव्याकरणस्य द्वितीयः मुख्यः अंशः घटकः अस्ति धातुपाठः। So when you say Paniniya Vyakarana, there are multiple things that are commonly listed as the prime components of Paniniya Vyakarana. All of them are also collectively referred as Paniniyam. So I'm going to talk about Paniniyam in the next class, but you can see on the website all the way in the beginning, the name of the section is Paniniyam. You might be able to see it in the right menu. So the name of the section is Paniniyam, and then you have Sutra Patha, Dhatu Patha, Gana Patha, Unadi Patha, Linganushasanam, Shiksha, Fit Sutrani. So all these are major components of Paniniyam, out of which Sutra Patha has been discussed in brief in the previous class. And today we are going to focus on Dhatu Pathaha. So what is Dhatu Pathaha? Paniniya Vyakaranasya Dhatunam Sankalanam. Ayam Paninina eva virachitaha asti. So most of the things that are classified under Paniniyam are created by Panini. Asmin Dhatu Pathe Kati Dhatavaha? We have already seen Prayena Dvisahasram Dhatavaha Santi. Ete sarvepi apratyayant dhatavaha. So we have seen this word. Etesham agre prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha na sambhavati. Ete eva aupadeshika dhatavaha namna jnayante. द्वितीयः यः भेदः आतिदेशिकधातवः नो चेत् नामधातवः नो चेत् सनाद्यन्तधातवः व्युत्पन्नाः धातवः इति अपि तेषाम् अन्यद् अभिधानम्। एते धातुपाठे न दीयन्ते, केवलम् औपदेशिकधातवः प्रायेण 200। द एक्साक्ट नंबर डिफर्स, परन्तु ते धातुपाठे दत्ताः सन्ति। धातुपाठे एते सर्वे धातवः केन क्रमेण उपस्थापिताः सन्ति इति चेत् पाणिनिना धातूनां पदं तथा च अन्तिमम् अक्षरं स्वीकृत्य कथञ्चित् धातूनां रचना कृता अस्ति. So if you see the dhatu patha over here, you can see that you can keep bhu sattayam, which is just a parasmaipadi dhatu, aside, but then you can see that from the next dhatu onwards, all the dhakaranta dhatus which are atmanepadi. So edha atmanepadi, spardha atmanepadi, gadha atmanepadi. So all the dhakaranta dhatus, once in a while there is an exception, but mostly dhakaranta dhatus that are atmanepadi. Then you can see dakaranta dhatus, vanda, bhanda, manda, spanda, klinda, muda, dada. So dakaranta dhatus. After dakaranta dhatus, he goes to thakaranta dhatus. So the, th. Then you go to takaramta dhatus, also changes the pada to parasmai pada. So takaramta dhatus, again thakaranta dhatus, now parasmai pada. Earlier it was atmane pada, now thakaranta dhatus are parasmai pada. Now dakaramta dhatus parasmai pada. So basically these two parameters, the last letter and the pada, basically he has done some sort of arrangement of these dhatus using the pada and the antima aksharam. परंतु अयम क्रमः विशेष रूपेण लाभाय नास्ति. So unlike what we saw yesterday, if a sutra is kept picked up from one place and kept at some other place, the meaning might completely change. That's not the case in the dhatu patha. There is no interrelationship between the dhatus at all. Therefore, as long as you clearly specify that this dhatu is parasmaipadi and it is say akarmaka or sakarmaka and it is in this gana and so on, you can almost randomly arrange dhatus in any way that you want. अतः पाणिनिना यः क्रमः दत्तः अस्ति सः विशेषरूपेण न लाभाय, अतः सूत्रपाठसदृशं धातुपाठः केनापि न कण्ठस्थीक्रियते. Now, this same Dhatu Patha, which we call as Paniniya Dhatu Patha, comes in multiple publications, multiple flavors, multiple versions. Basically, when through the generations the inscribing happened and people were writing and transferring the Dhatu Patha from generation to generation, there are some changes that were evident and they happened. Some new dhatus got inserted, some existing dhatus got removed. That happened only in some publications and not in others, and so on. So as a result, there are multiple versions of Dhatu Patha. We call them as a Samskaranani. So Dhatu Pathasya Vimshatyadhikani Samskaranani Santi, Parantu Teshu Pancha Samskaranani Adya Mukhya Rupena Swikriyante. So the 5 of them have basically been published with the modern publishing mechanism. You can find the printed books, you can find them online, and so on. So these are the 5 ones that are most commonly accepted. And as I mentioned, the baseline for all of them is the original Dhatu Patha that Panini created. So eventually 90% of the dhatus are same in all these. And whatever difference is there, you can also spot that the difference is very trivial. So instead of B, there will be W, or instead of B, there will be B. These kind of pronunciation level differences are the ones that result in the multiple editions, multiple versions, samskaranani. अतः धातुपाठस्य 20 संस्करणानि सन्ति, परन्तु तेषु केवलं 5 संस्करणानि एव मुख्यरूपेण स्वीक्रियन्ते. एतेषु संस्करणेषु 90% धातवः समानाः एव सन्ति, कुत्रचित् भेदाः दृश्यन्ते. So the names of these samskarana, some of you might have heard these names. Kshira Tarangini Dhatu Pathaha. So it is created by a scholar called Kshira Swami in 11th century. Dhatu Pradipaha Dhatu Pathaha. So it is created by a scholar called Maitreya Rakshita. Shabdika Bharanam Ityakyaha Dhatu Pathaha. Madhaviya Dhatu Vrittihi iti Aparaha Dhatu Pathaha. So this is created by Sayanacharya. Sayanacharya's elder brother was Madhava. So as a tribute to him, he names his book as Madhaviya Dhatu Vritti. And then there is very interesting Daiva Dhatu Patha, which is actually versus Shlokatmakaha Paniniya Dhatu Patha asti. So he arranges the dhatus, he changes the order. It's not the same order as the Paniniya Dhatu Patha. He changes the order, but the dhatus are listed in form of shlokas that can be recited. Now on our website, what I have done is I have taken the dhatus that are common, that are well known across and that are common across all these 5 dhatu pathas. But in addition, I have also made an effort to give all the possible variations that exist in one or more of these dhatu pathas. So for example, if you can see over here, if you go a little bit above around this, say dhatu 40, you can see that this is Kaumudi Dhatu 40, which is Chuta, and then there is a Kaumudi Dhatu 41. Kaumudi Dhatu is the Dhatu Patha present at the end of Siddhanta Kaumudi. So Siddhanta Kaumudi also has its own Dhatu Patha, which we take as the most standard one because people usually study Siddhanta Kaumudi line by line. So we take that Dhatu Patha as a standard one, and additional dhatus which are not in the Kaumudi Dhatu Patha, we call them, consider them as variations. So I have included these variations also. So you can see over here Kaumudi Dhatu 41 ityasya patha bhedaha. So instead of shchuta, this particular variation says shchuta. So ya is not there. So that kind of patha bheda is there. Sometimes there are dhatus that are found in other granthas. So Kaumudyam avidyamanaha jyuta dhatu. Or if you go a little bit down, you also have over here Kaumudyam avidyamanaha shrek iti dhatu. So if you click on this, there is this small exclamation icon. It will tell you that this is a patha bheda of a certain dhatu. It is in the dhatu pradipa and it is not in the Siddhanta Kaumudi. So that's this dhatu pradipa over here. So this way, when this Dhatu Patha was built a few years ago, I made almost sure that all the variations across all these Dhatu Pathas are also captured and they are indicated like this. So you can also go to the info page and you can see over here the same information will be presented. Obviously, some or the other dhatus might have missed out. That's not an issue. But all the major dhatus have been captured. And therefore, when you consider all those variations together, the eventual number goes, I think, more than 2100, 2200 in that range. But in general, if you get rid of all those variations or do not count them separately, सामान्यरूपेण द्विसहस्रं धातवः स्वीकृताः सन्ति. Now, when you look at any particular dhatu in the dhatu patha, the entry that you see is like this. So, if you go to this dhatu number 1472, let's actually go to dhatu number 1472, and you can see this entry on the website as you see a dhatu kru, dukrui karane, tanadihi ubhayapadi sakarmakah anit. So, this particular component will be there in almost every dhatu patha book. And then after that, specifically on the website, I have written the English meaning and the Hindi meaning. So we can keep that aside. But this central entry is seen usually in all the Dhatu Patha books. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk over each component of this line and explain the purpose, meaning, and the usage of that component in the Vyakarana. So that's all that we are going to do in today's class. That itself is going to take 1 full hour. So let's start with the basic understanding of what each of this component does. So to start with, there is this number 1472. Ayam grantha vishishtaha dhatu kramankaha. So if you go on the website, on our website, I have given a different number 8.10, which is basically a number to indicate that it is the 10th dhatu of the 8th gana. But in Siddhanta Kaumudi, the same dhatu is numbered as 1472. In yet another, say Dhatu Pradipa, there will be a different number. So every version will have their own different number. And as I mentioned, ordering really doesn't matter. So numbering also doesn't matter. So this is just a Grantha Vishishtaha Dhatu Kramankaha Asya Vishishtam Prayojanam Nasti. The next thing which is seen in the red color on the website is the main dhatu. We call it as the dhatoho drushya rupam, the visible form of the dhatu. What do we mean by visible form? This is the form which we use in our day-to-day conversation of grammar. So when I ask you, karoti, kurutah, kurvanti, iti kasya dhatoho rupani, the answer that you give is what is written in the red over here, kru dhatoho rupani. So that is dhatoho drushya rupam, the visible form of the dhatu. The reason why we call it as drushya rupam is because what immediately follows after it, dukrui, is the dhatoho moola rupam. So when Panini wrote his dhatu patha, he did not write kru as an entry, he wrote dukrui as an entry. So this is called aupadeshika rupam or moola rupam. I'm going to talk about aupadeshika rupam in details on the next slide. So aupadeshika rupam is essentially the way the dhatu is written by Panini, which is different than the way we usually refer to this dhatu in the normal day-to-day usage. So that's the aupadeshika rupam. Immediately after that is the meaning of the dhatu in Sanskrit. So dhatoho arthaha karane iti atra arthaha asti. After that, there is tanadihi, which is the gana of the dhatu. All of us know dhatus are divided into 10 ganas. So the name of the gana is given immediately after that. Then ubhayapadi. So is this dhatu parasmaipadi? Is this dhatu atmanepadi or ubhayapadi? That classification is given. Sakarmakaha. Is this dhatu sakarmaka, akarmaka or dvikarmaka? That classification will be given. And finally, whether the dhatu is eligible for getting the idagama. So the pratyaya attached to the dhatu, whether it gets idagama when attached to this dhatu, that particular property is given by the last entity, anit or set or wet. So for example, patha, when you make a tuman pratyanta form, it becomes pathitum. So that extra ikara that comes is called idagama. Kru dhatu is anit, so you don't get that idagama. So you just say kartum, not karitum or anything like that. So this way, this basic information of a dhatu is captured on this line. Now, one very important thing to understand over here is that this dhatu patha is simply a list of words, bhusattayam, edha vruddhau, spardha sangarshe, and so on. And these words might have multiple meanings in the language. So if you take an example of the very first dhatu, bhu, bhu is a verb in the meaning of to exists or to be. But at the same time, the word bhu is also a valid word in the language which means prithvi, earth. So bhuhu ityukte prithvi. But in that particular meaning, this word is not going to get the dhatu samnya. So however obvious this sounds, this has been established as a specific rule in grammar. So dhatu pathe vidyamanaha dhatavaha क्रियावाचके अर्थे एव धातु सम्यकाः भवन्ति अन्येषु अर्थेषु न. In fact, this I just remembered this. You remember that there are multiple grammars, right? So one of the grammar, non-Paninian grammar that we have on our website is this Saraswati Kanthabharanam. And if you go to the Saraswati Kanthabharanam, the very second sutra, it says Bhuvadihi Kriyavachanaha Dhatuhu. Not just Bhuvadihi Dhatuhu, but Kriyavachanaha Dhatuhu. So this particular aspect that these words are only used, considered as dhatu in the sense of kriya is extremely important siddhanta in Vyakarana Shastra. So dhatu pathe vidyamanaha dhatavaha kriyavachake arthe eva dhatu samyakaha bhavanti anyeshu artheshu na. Yatha bhu iti dhatuhu kevalam satta upasthitihi, to exist, to be, अस्मिन् अर्थे एव धातु सम्यकः, पृथिवी अस्मिन् अर्थे asya dhatu samnya nasti. Any basic questions so far before we go ahead? Now in the remaining slides, I am going to go over each of these points starting with Aupadeshika Rupam, Drishya Rupam and so on, and we will focus or we will go in details on each of those aspects. So let's start with Aupadeshika Rupam. As we saw just now, Dukrui is an example of Aupadeshika Rupam. So Paninina Dhatu Pathe धातूनां निर्देशः कैश्चित् अधिकैः वर्णैः सह कृतः दृश्यते. So that extra do and extra ya is being added. This is called upadesha. This specific way in which Panini writes the dhatu is called upadesha. So the definition of upadesha is upadeshaha adyocharanam. आद्य आचार्यः इत्युक्ते व्याकरणस्य प्रथमः आचार्यः इत्युक्ते पाणिनिः अनेन येन प्रकारेण धातूनाम् उच्चारणं कृतम्. So when he created the list, he did not mention kru, he mentioned dukrui. So that's called initial pronunciation done by Panini Maharshi. So that pronunciation, that representation is called upadeshaha. आद्य आचार्येण येन प्रकारे धातवः उच्चारिताः सः उपदेशः. अस्मिन् उपदेशे केचन अधिकाः वर्णाः सन्ति, तेषां लोपं कृत्वा धातोः दृश्यरूपं सिद्ध्यति. So you have dukrui, and all the way in the beginning of the prakriya, this do and this ya are removed. So lopaha bhavati, only kru remains. And these extra entities that are removed, there is a technical term for them in Vyakarana Shastra. We call them anubandhaha. We also call them itsamyaka varnaha. So later in the course, I am going to take one full class on this anubandhas or these itsamyaka varnas. Anubandha or itsamyaka varna are the letters that are added to the drishya rupa of the dhatu to make an aupadeshika form, and they are removed all the way at the beginning of the prakriya. See, the name is also beautiful. Anubandhaha. Anu means later. So Ramaha gacchati, Lakshmanaha anu gacchati, follows. And bandha means to tie. So Panini had the verb called kru in the mind, but he later on tied or added the do and the ya as the extra entities around that kru and made the final verb as dukruing. That's the reason they are called anubandha, attached afterwards. Afterwards, in the sense, not anywhere after in the prakriya, but in Panini's thought process, he created kru as the dhatu. Then he added these anubandhas, and then he spoke the dhatu as dukruing, which becomes your upadesha. So these anubandhas are always, there is no exception, they are always removed in the beginning step. So prakriyayaha prarambhika sopane anubandhanam lopaha bhavati. So do goes away, there is a sutra in Ashtadhyayi, ya goes away, there is a sutra in Ashtadhyayi, and lopam krutva drishyarupam siddhyati, that is just the kru, and then you add whatever pratyas and so on you want to add. So even before a pratyaya gets added, this anubandha lopa has to be done. That's the very first step of the prakriya. And now the obvious question which should come to your mind is that if this anubandha has to be removed right in the first step, so you write the dukru in the first step, in the next step do and ya go away and you just write kru, what's the point of adding the anubandhas? So औपदेशिक स्वरूपे अनुबन्धाः किमर्थं स्थापिताः सन्ति इति चेत् औपदेशिकस्वरूपे स्थापिताः एते अनुबन्धाः प्रक्रिया अग्रे कथं भविष्यति इत्यस्य विषये विशेषान् नियमान् कथयन्ति. So some information about how the prakriya will proceed is encoded in terms of these anubandhas. So even though the anubandhas are removed at the beginning, these information is retained, and that information is used maybe at 20th step, 30th step, 40th step of the prakriya to do a certain specific karya. So I'm going to give a few examples right on the next slide. But before that, we want to make sure that we want to understand what are the different types of anubandhas that Padini has employed. So this discussion is very crucial. Please pay attention. If you scan all the 2000 dhatus of Ashtadhyayi, you will see that there are 4 types of anubandhas that Padini has added. Before that, I must clarify, I forgot. It is not necessary that every verb will have an anubandha. So for example, if you go to the very first verb of the dhatu patha, bhu, you can see that the verb bhu, which is written in red, is exactly like the aupadeshika form bhu, which is written in grey. So it is not necessary that every verb will be presented with anubandha, but many words, so as you can see, many verbs, almost all verbs except for like 50 verbs or so, most of these verbs are specified with anubandha, and these anubandhas are of 4 types. Very important slide, you have to remember this. Later on in the course, we are going to quickly learn the sutras of this. At this time, I am going to refer back to this slide and not spend much time because you would have already understood this. So first, केषाञ्चन धातूनाम् अन्ते व्यञ्जनं स्थापितमस्ति. So Panini specifies a random, obviously not random, but for the beginner level students, kind of random hal letter vyanjana at the end of those dhatus. So ik, the verb is actually e, but he writes it as ik. Shing, that extra ng is added. Runya, so har ti, ru dhatu is represented as runya. Dhet, dana. So the dhatu is da, yachati, yachati, yachata, yachanti. That da dhatu is written as dana. Daipa, jrusha, and so on. So there is an extra hal letter at the end. Antimam vyanjanam. For some dhatus, there is a special component, aksharam, called ira with an itsamyaka ikara is kept at the end of the dhatu. So dhatunam ante ir iti aksharam sthapitam asti. So here is an example, drishir. Now drishir, there is still a hal letter at the end. But if you remove that hal letter, you don't get the drishya form as it is. Drishya is not the drishya form. The drishya form is drishir. So that last component, which is ir, has to be taken together. Anytime you see a r and an e before that, an anunasika e before that, the r is not to be taken as a separate anubandha, but ir as a combined unit must be taken as one anubandha. So there is a drishir which has ir as the anubandha. Then there are some dhatus for which a specific anubandha is added in the beginning of the dhatu, not in the end. So previous two were in the end. Now there is an anubandha which is added in the beginning of the dhatu. So the combination yi, which is ya plus e, this is not itsamnyaka, sorry, this is not anunasika ikara, this is the normal ikara. So the combination ya plus e, this is the one anubandha, it's an akshara. Or two, ta plus u, or do, da plus u. So one of these three letters might be present at the beginning of the dhatu. So you have yi bhi, bibheti, to be afraid. So that dhatu is written as yi bhi with a yi as an anubandha. Tukshu. So the kshu dhatu is written as tukshu, where tu is the anubandha. And then the dhatu dukrui is written with a do anubandha. So anytime you see ye, to, or do in the beginning of the aupadeshika form of the dhatu, it is always an anubandha. It is not two anubandhas, y and e. It is a single anubandha called ye, or to, or do. So these are the three ones. Two of them are put at the end. One of them is put in the beginning. And then there is yet another which is put at a random place. It can be in the beginning, it can be in the middle, it can be in the end. And it is basically anunasika swaraha. So anytime you see an anunasika swara in a dhatu, in the upadeshika form, it is anubandha. So for example, kshmayi, there is an anunasika yi at the end. Gamlu, there is an anunasika lu at the end. Ovai, there is an anunasika o at the beginning. So it can be in the beginning, it can be in the end, it can be in the middle, but there is an anunasika swara present in the dhatu. Again, let me remind, this ira is a special case. E, which is an anunasika ikara, is not to be taken separate. I mean, it is possible that some dhatu has E as the anunasika swara. But anytime E comes along with R, that unit has to be taken as the anubandha. If a single R appears, you can take it as a separate anubandha. If a single E appears, you can take it as a separate anubandha. But if the IRA unit is seen, it must be taken as a single anubandha and not split into E and R. So these are the four types of anubandha. You have last vyanjana, or you have ira, or you have ni to do, or you have an anunasika swara. And sometimes there are multiple anubandhas seen in a dhatu. So bahushu dhatushu ekadhikaha anubandhaha api drishyante. So see this example. Ishuchir. There is an E which is an anunasika swara in the beginning, and there is ira, which is the ira component towards the end. So two anubandhas are there. Tu o shvi. The dhatu aupadeshika form starts with two. So that's the prarambhika two. And then there is an anunasika o. So kutrachit anunasika swara asti. So now it is present in the middle place. So o is the anunasika swara. And then shvi is the actual drushya rupam. This next dhatu, do pachash, has three anubandhas. There is a hal letter at the end, sh. There is a do in the beginning, and there is an anunasika akara after ch. So anytime you see a do in the beginning, it is anubandha. Same for ye and tu. Anytime you see a hal letter, it is an anubandha. And anytime you see an anunasika swara, it is an anubandha. So look at the dhatu, circle or mark those anubandhas, and then in the immediate next step, you remove them. Now you have to understand this, that after you remove anubandhas, something else will come at the end. That is not to be considered as anubandha. Otherwise, we'll keep on deleting everything and nothing will remain. So essentially, so for example, here, if you take yi, mi, da as the dhatu, you see the last a is anubandha. So you say, okay, a is anubandha, let me remove it. So once you remove it, what you are going to get is midda, because you will also remove yi and you will also remove da, and midda with a half da will remain. Now you cannot say again ante vyanjanam asti. So the is at the end. So let me remove it as an anubandha. Because you have already identified the anubandhas in the Aupadeshika form. You have removed them, and whatever mida is remaining is not the Aupadeshika form. It is the Drishya Rupam. So anubandhas are not to be removed from the Drishya Rupam. Anubandhas are to be removed from the Aupadeshika form. So you take the Aupadeshika form, which is essentially the gray stuff which is written over here. You take the Aupadeshika form, you remove all Anubandhas, and then you proceed with the Prakriya. Now, having said this, what is the purpose of Anubandhas? So, Anubandhanam bahuni prayojanani santi. So, I can take actually 3, 4, 5 classes in sequence just to teach the purpose of Anubandhas. It's a vast topic. There are books written on just the purpose of Anubandhas. But we will not go in that details right now. Let's take just 2 examples. If there is a nakara which is the anubandha, then Panini wants to say that this is an atmane padi dhatu. So it is a code language. So you can see over here, shing, the dhatu has ng as its samyaka letter. Mrung is another example. So she becomes shete, atmanepadi. Mrung becomes mriyate, atmanepadi. So anytime there is a nakar anubandha, the dhatu is atmanepadi. In the same way, if there is a y, not this y, but the terminal y as an anubandha, like dubruya as an anubandha. Let me mark this with a pen over here. So this dubru, sorry. So this ya ending ya, or even in dukruin, there is this ending ya, ruya ending ya. So this ya as an anubandha will make the dhatu ubhayapadi. So a ngakara makes the dhatu atmanepadi, and a yakara anubandha makes the dhatu ubhayapadi. Another example. यस्मिन् धातौ ओ इति अनुबन्धः अस्ति ओ द अनुनासिक स्वर ओ तस्मात् विहितस्य क्त प्रत्ययस्य प्रक्रियायां नकारादेशः भवति. So there are some dhatus for which the kta pratyaya, when it is added to the dhatu, the final form gets a n in the conversion of ta to n. So you hear a n, you don't hear a ta. So for example, ha dhatu, the kta pratyanta form of ha dhatu is hina. The ta pratyanta form of laj dhatu is lagna. Masj dhatu is magna. So think which of the kta pratyanta forms you have seen which end with a nakara rather than takara. So for those dhatus, there will be O as the anubandha. Not all of them, because there are other rules also which will convert the ta to na. But one way of ensuring that the ta of the kta pratyay becomes na is to add the o as the anubandha in the dhatu. So for example, in ohak, there is o as the anubandha. In o lasji, there is o as the anubandha. It can be anywhere. It need not be in the beginning. Remember, the anunasika swara that we are talking is kutrachit. It is can be present anywhere. So if this O anubandha is present, the kta pratyaya will become na. So this way there are many uses of anubandhas. I have just explained 2 of them for now. Now there is another interesting point about this Aupadeshika Swarupam. In the Aupadeshika Swarupam, along with this extra anubandhas, sometimes a letter is represented in a different way. So केचन धातवः औपदेशिकस्वरूपे भिन्नरूपेण निर्दिष्टाः सन्ति. There are 2 possible variations or 2 possible ways in which this can happen. First, धात्वादि नकारस्य स्थाने णकारः. So in the Drishya Rupam, where you see a nakara, the Aupadeshika form has a nakara, not nakara. So the niya dhatu, ni nayati is the dhatu. And because there is a ya, you can also say nayate. Now it is ubhaypadi, because there is a ya as the anubandha. So this niya dhatu is actually present in the dhatu patha not as niya but as niya. There is a na over there. Similarly, the nama dhatu is present as nama. The na is present in place of na. So obviously, after the anubandhas are removed, there will be sutras with which the na will get converted back to na. But the point to understand is that the representation in the Upadeshika form is slightly different. It is niya, not niya. And this is not true for all the nakaradi dhatus. So sarveshu dhatushu vidyamanaha nakarah etadrushah nakara rupena sthapitah nasti. So some dhatus na will be retained. For some dhatus, instead of na, a na will be written. So for example, nath is the dhatu or nard is the dhatu. In these dhatus, the na does not become a na. But in case of niya or in case of nama, the aupadeshika form shows a nakara instead of nakara. So this is one possible difference. I mean, if you keep the anubandha discussion aside, then this is one additional difference that you can see for some dhatus. The second difference that you can see is instead of sa, there is a sh. So sah ityasya sthane shah. Sai ityasya sthane shai. And not just that, but this conversion of sa to sh also triggers the shtutva, because of which stha will be written as a shtha. Because if instead of sa you put a sh over there, you cannot say shtha. You can't even pronounce that. Shtha. Immediately the shtutva will be triggered and it will be written as shtha. Similarly, instead of sna, if you say sh, then immediately natva will be triggered or shtutva will be triggered and it will become a na. So sna ityasya sthane shna. So some additional triggering happens. So instead of stha, it will become shtha, sna, it will become shna. You can take a look at the dhatu patha and understand that. But again, the only point to remember is that this is for only some dhatus, not all dhatus. So sarveshu dhatushu vidyamanasya आदि सकारस्य स्थाने एतादृशः औपदेशिक रूपे सकारः भवेत् इति आवश्यकं नास्ति. So you can have swada or you can have sphutta where sa is present and not sa, not sha. So in all, when you see the differences between the aupadeshika form and the normal dhatu, there are two levels of differences. One is the anubandhas, which are four of them, and second is these additional replacement letters. Instead of a na will appear in the aupadeshika form, and instead of a sa, a sh will appear in the aupadeshika form, and that sh might trigger an additional shtutva. That's all. If you keep these differences in mind, other than that, the aupadeshika form is the same as the drishya rupam. And why this kind of difference? Sometimes na is written as na and sa is written as sh. Again, Panini wants to code some additional information. He was not able to code this extra interesting information using the anubandhas, so he created another mechanism for that. Very interesting coding. He says that if I give a dhatu with a na in the upadesha, it means that this nakara will become the nakara with upasarga pra or para or pari, where the ra comes in the upasarga. So upasarge vidyamanaha yaha rephaha tasya prabhavena dhatoho nakarasya nakaraha sambhavati. So pra plus namati becomes pranamati. So yesterday I mentioned for the natva there are some 38, 39 rules. So this is one of the rules which says that if the upasarga has a repha in it, like pra or para or pari, then the beginning nakara of the dhatu will become a nakara only if the aupadeshika form was with a nakara. So nama dhatu, its aupadeshika form was with nama, and therefore pra plus namati becomes pranamati. But narda dhatu, its aupadeshika form was not with a nakara, it was with a nakara, Therefore, pra plus nardati will not become pranardati, it will become pranardati. So, this is now a new rule, probably many of you have learned. When will an upasarga change the beginning nakara of the dhatu to the nakara? Only beginning, no other nakaras. Beginning nakara to the nakara only when the aupadeshika form of that dhatu has a nakara instead of the nakara. So that is the purpose of this additional change, na in place of na. And similarly, there is a purpose of putting a sh in place of sa. It is seen in the sannanta rupas. So for example, pathapi pathishati. So that's the sannanta rupa, pathitum ichhati. So in the sannanta rupas, you hear that sh. So if you take the stha dhatu, which is basically the stha dhatu, the sannanta form of that stha dhatu is tishthasati, not tisthasati, tishthasati. So that sh is heard. Whereas if you go, for example, take the swada dhatu, it does not have the sh in the aupadeshika form. So it is not in the sannanta version, it is not sishvadishate, but it is sisvadishate. So anytime Panini wants to make you hear a shakara in the sannanta form and a few other versions as well, not just sannanta, I just took it as an example. You can see it in lit lakara prakriya also. But in sannanta form, anytime Panini wants you to hear a shakara, he will make sure that the aupadeshika form of the dhatu has a sh in it. So these are the two extra differences between the drishya rupam and the aupadeshika rupam. Either there will be a na in place of beginning na, or there will be a sh in place of beginning sa. And other than these two, the only differences between the aupadeshika rupa and the drishya rupa is those extra anubandhas. Any questions? Probably it's already becoming a little bit more heavy. Believe me, this is the only complex part of today's class. The rest all is pretty easy. So that's basically the Vidya Bhagini.
महोदय, भवता यद् उक्तं तत् सत्यमेव। एतत् एतस्य पूर्वं मया न विदितः यत् प्रति प्रणत्वं न भवति इति, परन्तु तत्र सन्धिवाच्यं किमपि नास्ति वा तत्र नत्वपरिवर्तनार्थं तत्र?
किं नास्ति? सन्धि नास्ति?
तत्र नत्वं न भवति इति अन्यत् किमपि सन्धि नत्व सूत्रं किमपि नास्ति वा?
न, तथा नास्ति. प्र इति भिन्नं पदं, नमति इति भिन्नं पदं. रिमेम्बर् वाट् वी लर्न्ड. सेपरेट पद.
अस्तु, धन्यवादः.
पदान्तरेणत्वं न भवति किल. द रूल अटुकु पोंगुमिनमपि इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल अक्रॉस पदास.
अस्तु, धन्यवादः महोदय.
Anything else? Okay, so that was basically the discussion about just the one component. So this swada and swada. Chandramouli Mahoday.
The question I had was, is it sanya, it and anubandha different?
They are same as far as initial 200, 300 classes are concerned. There is a small difference between the two and it is debatable, but we'll not go into it. So basically, I would say they are same. Unless you are really writing the second level MA, some really special paper, they are same.
Okay.
I don't want to complicate you with unnecessary logic. In 99.99% of the cases, they are same. There is a view which says they are different, but it is just a view. It is not an accepted siddhant. Anything else?
No, I think this is clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this was basically all about the Aupadeshika Rupa and the Drishya Rupam. Then let's go after that. The next one is the Artha of the Dhatu. So, Parda Kutsite Yati Prayatne. So, Artha of the Dhatu. Now, it is commonly believed that the meanings that you see in the Dhatu Patha today, Bhu Sattayam, Edha Vruddhau, Spardha Sangarshe, and so on, they are not written by Panini. So, ete arthaha Panini rachitaha na. Paninehe moola dhatu pathe arthaha na asan iti vidvam saha manyante. Now there is a lot of discussion. Some people don't agree to it. Some people will say why will Panini? Some people say why Panini will write without arthas and so on. So there is a detailed discussion. In fact, there are some scholars who propose that Panini created two dhatu pathas. One is the Vruddha dhatu patha and one is the Laghu dhatu patha. And the Vruddha dhatu patha had meanings and Laghu dhatu patha doesn't have the meanings. And it is the Laghu dhatu patha that has come down the generations and Vruddha dhatu patha is lost or whatever. But there are different views. In general, the accepted norm is that the arthas that you see today are not written by Panini. So nahi dhatu pathe arthaha adishyante iti bhashykarena uktamasti. So who wrote these arthas? भीमसेनः इति कश्चन वैयाकरणः आसीत् अनेन एते अर्थाः स्थापिताः. So it need not be just one person. Maybe there are a group of people who added the arthas over the generations. But today, the credit of adding all these arthas, probably collecting them together and so on, goes to this Vaiyakarana called Bhimasena. So Nagesha says, Bhimasenena arthaha sthapitaha iti aitiyam is basically the history, is basically understood by parampara. So dhatus written by Panini were just Bhu, Edha, Vruddha, Spardha and so on. The additional arthas are collected or written by Bhimasena. The more important point is, and this is extremely important for you to understand, these arthas that you see in the Dhatu Patha are not like hard written in stone. एते अर्थाः केवलम् उपलक्षणार्थाः रिप्रेजेंटेटिव सन्ति. अन्येषु अर्थेषु अपि धातवः प्रयुक्ताः दृश्यन्ते. So there is a very well known siddhanta or ukti called anekarthaः dhatavah. Dhatus have multiple meanings. And what Bhimasena has done, he has just picked one meaning and represented it. In some cases, he picks two meanings, some cases 5 meanings and so on. But whatever he has kept are the representative meanings. So, Bhimasena krutaha artha nirdeshaha udaharanamatram asti iti Bhattoji Dikshitena Shabdakaustubham ityakhe granthe nirdishtam asti. There is another interesting aspect that actually tells us that this is true. So this is just one sample example taken from the Sutra Patha. So there is this particular sutram called Guptich Kidbhyas San. This sutra appears all the way in the beginning of the 3.1. So Guptich Kidbhyas San is a sutra. You don't need to understand anything about this sutra except, other than what I am telling right now. So this particular Guptich Kidbhyas San, it says that 3 verbs. So there are these 3 words, Gupa, Tijya and Kitta. So Gup, Tij, Kit. So 3 verbs, they get a San Pratyaya. Sun, the same sun that we saw on the last slide. But for some different meanings, these dhatus get a San Pratyaya, and this San Pratyaya is to be added when these dhatus are used in a certain meaning. So Gupa dhatu, when it is used in a meaning X, you add a San Pratyaya. When Tija dhatu is used in a meaning Y, you add a San Pratyaya. Like that, there is this list. Now, ironically, if you open up the Dhatu Patha and you see the Gupa Dhatu, that X meaning is not there. If you see Tija Dhatu, that Y meaning is not there. So the meaning given for the Gupa Dhatu in the Dhatu Patha is yet another. And the meaning for which the San Pratyay will be added. So Panini says that only when that meaning is there, San Pratyay should be added. That meaning is altogether different. So how can that be the case? So this exactly proves that Dhatu Pathe Vidyamanaha Arthaha Udaharanamatra Udaharana Rupeda Eva Sthapitaha Santi. So Guptich Kidbhyas San iti sutrena येषु अर्थेषु एतेभ्यः धातुभ्यः सन् प्रत्ययः विधीयते ते अर्थाः एव धातुपाठे न सन्ति। अतः धातुपाठे विद्यमानाः अर्थाः उपलक्षणार्थाः रिप्रेजेंटेटिव उपलक्षणार्थाः एव इति सिद्धम्। And obviously all of us know उपसर्गस्य प्रयोगेण धातूनाम् अर्थेषु बृहत् परिवर्तनं भवति। प्रहाराहार संहार विहार परिहारवत्. So when you attach an upasarga, there is a thorough transformation in the meaning, and you don't have this information encoded in the dhatu patha. So you have additional books called Upasargartha Chandrika. I think we have it over here. If you go to Upasargartha Chandrika, you will see the meanings of all possible Upasarga Dhatu combinations. But that information is not there in the Dhatu Patha. So Upasargasya prayogena ye nutanaha arthaha siddhyanti tesham api tatra Dhatu Pathe parigananam nasti. So that is basically about the meaning. So we are done with Bhu, Sattayam, and now let's go to the next one, the Gana of the Dhatu. This is, I think, most familiar with you all. So most familiar to you all. So let me stop my monologue and ask you to help me out over here. So Paninina Swayameva Dhatunam Dashasu Ganeshu Vibhajanam Krutamasti, 10 Ganas. प्रत्येकम गणस्य नाम तस्य गणस्य प्रथम धातोः आधारेण दीयते. So whatever is the first dhatu of that gana, the name of the gana will be given based on that. And then there is a vikarana pratyaya. Most of you are aware of this in the basic Sanskrit studies, that there is a vikarana pratyaya added in the prakriya of that dhatu. So does somebody want to give the names of all the 10 ganas in sequence? If you want to talk, please raise your hand. All that I'm asking is give the names of 10 ganas in sequence. Not Prathama Gana, Dvitiya Gana. Actual names of the ganas. Uma Devi.
Namaste Mahodaya.
Namaste.
Bhu Dhatu, Prathama Gana. Second one is Adadi. Third is Juhotyadi. Divadi, Swadi, Swadi, Rudadi.
There's Tudadi before that. So let me present it over here. You can read along with it. So Tudadi is there.
Tudadi, Rudadi, Tanadi, and Krayadi. The last one is Churadi.
It's not Krayadi, it's Kriyadi.
Kriyadi.
Okay. And does anyone know a karika that is going to give all those 10 names? So it's a very well-known, very famous karika. Does anybody know? If you don't know, pull down your hand. Does anybody know this karika? Chandra Prabhaji, do you know the karika? Can't seem to unmute. No worries. So is there anybody else who wants to say the karika? There is a very beautiful shloka which will give you all the 10 ganas. You should remember this. This is very crucial. You have to remember the names exactly in this way. Bhwadihi, Adadihi, Juhotyadihi, and so on. Anybody wants to give the karika? So Bhwadyadadir, Juhotyadir, Divadiswadirevacha, Tudadishcha, Rudhadishcha, Tanadikri Churadayaha. So remember this karika. This gives the 10 ganas. So that's about the gana, bhwadi to churadi. The next one is the pada, parasmaipadi, atmanepadi, and ubhayapadi. So remember, we have seen this in one of the previous classes as well, that parasmaipada and atmanepada are the terms given to the pratyayas. Dhatus are not called parasmai pada and atmane pada. Understand the terminology. What is parasmai pada? I have told this in one of the, I think, class number 9, I guess. Tiptasjhi, sipthastha, mipwasmas. These are parasmai pada samyaka pratyayaha. Ta atam, jhathasatham, dhvam, it, vahi, mahing. These are atmane pada samyaka pratyayaha. Now the dhatus for which only parasmai pada samyaka pratyayas are attached are called parasmai padi dhatus. सो ते धातवः येभ्यः केवलं परस्मैपदसंज्ञक प्रत्ययाः विधीयन्ते ते परस्मैपदिनः. सो परस्मैपदिन् इति प्रातिपदिकं, परस्मैपदी इति प्रथम एकवचनं, परस्मैपदिनः. So remember this ikara when you talk about the dhatus. Dhatus are parasmaipadi versus atmanepadi. So kevalam atmanepadasya pratyah vidhiyante te atmanepadinah. Kevalam parasmaipadasya pratyah vidhiyante te parasmaipadinah. And sarvepi ashtadasha pratyah vidhiyante te ubhayapadinah. And it is very important to understand that when you say a dhatu is ubhayapadi, this is very crucial. Please pay attention. Whenever you say dhatu as ubhayapadi, the general norm is to randomly attach parasmaipada pratyayas or atmanepada pratyayas as you wish. But unfortunately, that's not how Panini describes it. When a dhatu is called ubhayapadi, Panini specifically tells us when to attach atmanepada pratyayas and when to attach parasmaipada pratyayas. It is not a choice that is left to us. It is specifically told by Acharya when to use atmanepada pratyayas and when to use the parasmaipada pratyayas on an ubhayapadi dhatu. So the rule is that whatever action is being discussed, if the doer of the action is going to get the fruit himself, then you use the atmane padam. Atmane is a self. Atman means yourself. So yatra kriyayaha phalam karta swayam labhate tatra atmane padam. Yatra anyaihi api tat phalam labhyate tat parasmai padam. Tada parasmai padam. Pratyaya vidhanam. So kriyayaha phalam karta swayam labhate tada atmanepada pratyayaha anyatra parasmaipada pratyayaha. So when you say mata pachati with a parasmaipada pratyaya, it means mata is cooking for herself. So you should not actually use the parasmaipada over here. You should say mata pach. No, this is reverse. Sorry. So when you say mata pachate, mata swasya krute eva pachate. And when you say mata pachati, mata anyesham krute pachati. So when you say the mother cooks for herself, so atmani only for herself, then mata pachate is the correct usage. Whereas you say mata cooks for herself but also for kids. So anyesham krute api pachana kriya bhavati tada mata pachati iti parasmai pade prayogaha bhavati. This is only for the ubhayapadi dhatus. If a dhatu is atmanepadi, whosoever gets the phala, whether it's the mother herself or somebody else, you will continue to use the atmanepada pratyayas. Similarly for parasmaipada, only when the dhatu is ubhayapadi, you have this rule. If the fruit is obtained by the mother or by the karta herself, himself, it will get atmanepada pratyayas. Otherwise, it will get the parasmaipada pratyayas. And the division in the dhatu patha, 1000 dhatus are around parasmaipadis. So half of the dhatus are parasmaipadis and remaining 1/4 is atmanepadis and 1/4 is ubhayapadis. The upasargas can complicate the cases. So upasarga se upasthito dhatunam pade parivartanam bhavati. Jayati is parasmaipadi, vijayate, parajayate is atmanepadi. And lakaras also can complicate the cases. This is very unique. So sometimes a dhatu that is atmanepadi becomes parasmaipadi in certain lakaras. So mru dhatu is atmanepadi, but in some specific lakaras it becomes parasmaipadi. So in the lut lakara it is not marishate, it is marishati. Similarly in lit lakara it is mamara, so it becomes parasmaipadi. Some other lakaras also it will become parasmaipadi. So that's about the pada. We still need probably 15-20 more minutes. I want to finish this akarmaka and set thing. There's nothing more. So that's about the pada. The next entity is the karmatvam. So the kriya that is indicated by the dhatu, tasyaha kriyayaha karma sambhavati va. Is a karma possible on that action? Based on that, the dhatus are classified as sakarmaka, akarmaka and dvikarmaka. All of us already hopefully know this. So sakarmaka ityukte karma padam svikurvanti, अकर्मकः इत्युक्ते कर्मपदं न स्वीकुर्वन्ति. Example of सकर्मक is लिखति, गच्छति and so on. कर्मपदं न स्वीकुर्वन्ति is हसति, वर्धते and so on. And dve karmapade svikurvanti. So sometimes there are two karmapadas. Those of you who have attended Bhasha Paka, I have given a detailed account of dvikarmaka dhatus there. Otherwise, you can, I think in your Gita Pravesha or some other Kovida books also, there will be an account of dvikarmaka dhatus. So dve karmapade svikurvanti. Vishnuho balim vasudham yachate and so on. If you want to know more about dvikarmaka dhatus, I think I have an article over here. So if you go to Vyakarana Lekhaha in the right menu, there is some article somewhere on the this 29 number Dvikarmakaha Dhatavaha. You can go to open this article and you can read about it in more details. The division is that there are around 1,500. So most of the dhatus are sakarmakas, a handful of akarmakas. So 500 are akarmakas, a quarter of them, and very few are dvikarmakas. They're actually listed. Dvikarmaka dhatus are listed in a karika. An important point to understand over here is that look at the language that I'm using. Dhatavaha karmapadam svikurvanti. It does not say karmapadam bhavedeva. So the compulsion is not that the karmapada must be present. Even if you say sa likhati, or even if you say saha gacchati, there is no karmapada in the sentence, but still the dhatu will be called sakarmaka, because sakarmaka versus akarmaka is not about presence of karmapada, but it is about capability or possibility of taking a karmapada. So yatra yatra karmapadasya svikaraha sambhavati tatra tatra sakarmakatvam nochet akarmakatvam, and in some cases two karmapadas are possible, so that is dvikarmakatvam. Upasargasya upasthitau karmapade karmatvasya parivartanam sambhavati. So ru dhatu is dvikarmaka, but viharati, to roam around, is akarmaka. Sthatisthati is akarmaka, but adhitisthati is sakarmaka. So upasargas might change the karma. Now, in this context, there is a very interesting question that should come to your mind, and if not, I will put the question and then answer. There are so many karakas that a dhatu can have. There is a kartru karaka, which is very special. We can keep it aside because every dhatu has a karta. But other than that, there is karma karaka, karana karaka, sampradana, apadana, adhikarana. And it is quite possible that some dhatus have karma, some don't have. Some have karana, some cannot have. Some can have apadana, some cannot have, and so on. So for each of those karakas, you can have a savarjan and an avarjan. So sakaranaka, akaranaka, sasampradanaka, asampradanaka. Like that, for each of the karanas, you can actually have, each of the karakas, you can actually have this version of possibility of that karaka, whereas non-possibility of that karaka. But we don't have such variation, we don't have such divisions or such tags like sakaranaka, sasampradanaka, and so on. We only have sakarmaka and akarmaka. What is so special with the karmakaraka that we are forced to distinguish between the two? So this is a very important question, and there are the answer to this is a little advanced, so I'm not going to give you all the details. We are not prepared for that at the moment. But let me quickly give you some simple details that based on the possibility of karmakatva, there are properties or there are ways in which sentences can be newly constructed. So if a dhatu is sakarmaka, it can be converted into the karmani form. If the dhatu is akarmaka, it has to be converted into bhave form. So then there is nothing that goes in the prathama. So when you convert saha gramam gacchati to karmani form, tena gramaha gamyate. Whereas when you just say ramaha hasati, it becomes a bhave form, ramena hasyate, and nothing goes in the prathama over there. So karmani form is a fundamental property that is encoded in the sutras, whereas the sampradana form, apadana form, adhikarana form are not valid concepts in Paniniya Vyakarana. Panini in his Sutra Patha codes the karmani form, codes the bhave form, and therefore the dhatus have this special tag of sakarmaka versus akarmaka attached to them, Panini does not code the Karana form or say a Sampradana form. He doesn't require that in the sutras, and therefore such kind of classification is not needed. There is much more to it, but let's not go in further details. Another reason, another place where Panini has coded this Sakarmaka versus Akarmaka, if the dhatu is Akarmaka, then there is a Kta Pratyay which can be added in the Kartari form. So in general, the Kta Pratyay goes in the Karmani form. You say Taya Patram Likhyate. So Taya. So that's the Karmani Prayoga. Sorry. Taya Patram Likhitam. So Kta Pratyay goes in the Karmani type of sentences. But if the dhatu is akarmaka, then kta pratyay can go in the kartari type of sentences. So you can say Ramaha Shaitaha. So Rama is the karta who is sleeping, but you are using this in the prathama. So kartari prayoga. Karmani prayoga like Ramena Shaitam is also possible. But kartari prayoga like Ramaha Shaitaha is possible. Krishnaha Hasitaha is possible, and so on. So there are many such reasons where Panini encodes karmakatva specific properties in sutras, and therefore the sakarmaka versus akarmaka differentiation is present in the dhatu patha. Such properties for sampradana apadana are not encoded, and therefore such differentiation is not needed in the dhatu patha. That's all about the karmakatva. And where did this last thing go? And the last one is a set versus anit. We have already discussed this. So the dhatus are classified into set versus anit versus wet. Some pratyas, not all. This is a very complex topic. Some pratyas get an E. So patha becomes pathitum, hasa becomes hasitum. Around 1,700 dhatus out of 2,000 are set dhatus. The anit dhatus, you don't hear an E. So kru becomes kartum, da becomes datum, and so on. It is only in some dhatus, some forms, okay? So for example, if you take aniyar pratyaya, idagama will never be heard. Patha becomes pathaniya, kru becomes karaniya. So only specific pratyayas, it's written over here, takaradi pratyayanta rupeshu. So the pratyaya must begin with a takara, like tumun, or ta, or ktwa, so twa, and so on. There are a few more rules, but we can keep it aside for now. But in general, for the takara adi pratyay, that covers like 90% of the cases. So there, if you see an E as an extra particle, then this dhatu is set. Otherwise, the dhatu is anit. Around 1700 dhatus are set. Remaining the 300 dhatus are anit. And anit dhatus are actually memorized by students. So I'm not asking you to memorize this, but in Siddhanta Kaumudi, there is a series of some 10-12 shlokas in which 300 anit dhatus are given, and any serious student of Paniniya Vyakarana has typically memorized all anit dhatus because it helps significantly in the further prakriya. And then there is a third category of dhatus called as weight dhatus, which is vikalpena set. So sometimes they have sometimes they create forms with the idagama, sometimes they create forms without idagama. Sometimes in the sense both choices are there. So guhu is a weight dhatu. You have guhitavya with an ikara. You have godhavya without an ikara. So it behaves like a set. It behaves like an anit. Similarly, kshama dhatu is another example. Only 40 dhatus are wet. This is a typing mistake. Only 40 dhatus are wet dhatus, and this list is given by Panini in sutras. So you don't have a direct mention as wet. This is a list given by Panini in the sutras. This idagama is a pretty complex topic, and for this idagama, there are around 71 sutras in Ashtadhyayi. I think we are running out of time. Just 2 more slides. Very simple stuff actually. This part that is written on this slide is already taught in one of the previous classes. So in the Aupadeshika Swarupa, the Udatta Anudatta Swarita letters are, in the Aupadeshika Swarupa, you can see the Udatta, Anudatta and Swarita letters, and that Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita will indicate many times the pada of the dhatu, the first swara of the dhatu. If it is Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita, it will also tell whether the dhatu is a set or anit. So I have gone over these points in details when we talked about the Udatta, Anudatta and Swarita. You can go over this slide and revise those particular points. One last point and we will stop. In the Dhatu Patha, along with the Dhatus, there are some sutras as well. These sutras, only 30 of them are there. These sutras are called Gana Sutras. In fact, I can show these to you. If you go to the Dhatu Patha on the website, click on this add filters. This is an extremely powerful tool. You have multiple ways in which you can filter out or make subsections or selections on the dhatus. So for example, you can select dhatus of Bhwadi Gana, or you can select dhatus of Divadi Gana, and so on. You can select only Parasmaipadi dhatus or Atmanepadi dhatus, and so on. You can do the combination. So for example, all the Atmanepadi dhatus of Adadi Gana that are set, and then there are 21 dhatus. You can just click there and find the entire list. So you can do all possible permutations, combinations. It's a very powerful tool which will help you filter out certain types of dhatus. And in the homework, one full 10-mark question is given. You will have to use this tool in a very novel way, intelligent way, to figure out dhatus that match the given criteria. So for example, in here, Dhatu Patham Anvishya Yatha Nirdishtam Dhatum Artha Gana Pada Ityenena Saha Likhata. So Saha Dhatuhu Yasmin Takaraha Anubandhaha Asti. So you go to this particular filters, you go to the section of the Anubandhas, you see Takara, Ta plus Ita means Tita. So Takara Itsamnyaka Asti. You click that, you will see only one dhatu selected. You select this, go here and see the dhatu. So in this way, you'll have to go over all these questions and very intelligently use these filters to find out the matching dhatus. So one of the filters towards the end over here in the miscellaneous section is Gana Sutrani. So sutras present in the Dhatu Patha are called Gana Sutras. There are 30 Gana Sutras over here. You can see some of them are in the first Gana, some of them are in the second, fourth Gana, 10th Gana, and so on. But these are all Gana Sutras. They look exactly like Ashtadhyayi Sutras. Ghatadayaha mitaha, shamo darshane, ghatadayaha shritaha, and so on. So Dhatu Pathe prayena trimshat sutrani santi. These are not called Ashtadhyayi Sutras, they are called Gana Sutras. And the purpose of this is to give rules with respect to certain dhatus. So here are some examples. Now because we are running short of time, I'll just take one example. You can read the slide later on. So this particular middle rule, Hantyarthascha, you can see there is this somewhere Hantyarthascha is a Gana Sutra over here. This Hantyarthascha Gana Sutra says that in the first 9 ganas, so Bhwaditaha Kriyadi Paryantam, in the first 9 ganas, whatever are the dhatus in the meaning of hana. So hana means to kill. Ityasya eva arthe adimeshu navasu ganeshu ye kepi dhatavah samti te sarve churadi gane api svikartavyaha. So look at the first 9 ganas. Whatever are the dhatus with the meaning of to kill, take them, make a copy and put it in the 10th gana. For example, the hana dhatu is in the adadi gana. It means to kill. So you also keep it in the churadi gana. If it is in the adadi gana, the form will be hanti. If it is in the churadi gana, the form becomes ghatayati. Both are acceptable. So in this way, there are various Gana Sutras that talk about different properties and placements of dhatus. So I'm not going to teach any Gana Sutras, maybe 2 or 3 Gana Sutras we will learn in our course at a later point in time, say module 10, 11 or something like that. But I just wanted to give you an idea that there are such Gana Sutras available. So you can go over this slide and read the other 2 examples on your own. And then on the last slide, there are some online resources. The Dhatu Patha, you can search with Aupadeshika Rupam, Drushya Rupam, Dhatu number, meanings in various languages, and so on. You can also search with verb forms. So understand, this is an extremely important, powerful tool. You can actually search for the form like gachati, and it will precisely pinpoint you to the required dhatu, required verb form, and so on. You can see, you can go over all these tabs and see various possible forms, and then you can also sort these dhatus alphabetically. So if you just go to the main page on the dhatu patha and just click this 1 to 9 button, you can sort these dhatus alphabetically. Again, click it back and you will be able to sort it in the numeric manner. So these are basically the aspects about the dhatu patha. I think I rushed. The PPT was a little larger than what I expected, but that's okay. So this was just a getting started on the dhatu patha. Later on in module 9-10, whenever we learn the aspects of the tinganta prakriya and krudanta prakriya, we will revise these points again. I will be talking in much more details at that time. But in this particular second module of our course, the theme is to get familiar with all aspects of the Paniniya Vyakarana. So in the previous class, we did the Sutra Patha. Today's class is the Dhatu Patha. In the next class, I am going to take the other components like the Gana Patha, Unadi Patha, Linganushasana. All these will be covered in a single class. So I will be taking all these components in the next class. So Samapayamaha, here is the homework. This homework for this week is it is a little smaller. It will take less time. Some amount of investigation is there. So ekavakyena uttarata and dhatu patham anvishya yatha nirdishtam dhatum chitva likhata. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take it. Otherwise, we can stop and we will meet the next week at the usual time. Samapayamaha. अष्टाध्यायी जगन्माता यस्य चित्तात् समुत्थिता वेदानामुपकाराय तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. शब्द ब्रह्म समाराध्य कृतवान् यो विलक्षणं सर्वाश्चर्यमिदं शास्त्रं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. येन धौता गिरः पुंसां विमलैः शब्दवारिभिः तमश्चाज्ञानजं भिन्नं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. धन्यवादः.